are recording. So I wanted to say a big welcome to Sonal, who's joining me today on the Healthy Business Leader Show. This is episode 2. So we've only got 500 of these to do until we're famous. So not long to go. Last week I had Ian on the show and we spoke a bit about business, a bit about fitness, essentially the stuff that we're kind of interested in. So I'm joined by Sonal today, who's a clarity and performance coach. And she's going to tell us a little bit about what she does. And I'm going to tell a bit about what we do. So I'll let you go first and I'll go after you.
Thank you. So, I'm a clarity and performance coach. I work mostly with men, actually, to help them, I guess, in a world where we're constantly chasing for titles, promotions and money. It's just making sure that people are actually striving towards the right things. I firmly believe that, ambition is great and it's healthy. It's just we tend to lose our path along the way sometimes. And that's how we end up burning out, by doing too much of the wrong thing. So I'm there to kind of take it all back to that core, the value set of what matters most.
Cool. You've practiced that.
Yeah.
So that's a bit about...
I haven't, actually.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, it come out quite naturally. So a little bit about me. So obviously, my name's Cameron. I run a company called True Fitness, and we've got an amazing team which help essentially CEOs, senior business leaders, to turn their health around in a very, very short period of time. So what we do is a bit more of a holistic approach rather than just saying, train twice a week or eat this. We overhaul everything from sleep to supplements to, as deep as you want to go with it. So essentially we help the hardest to help. We make sure that they kind of get themselves turned around very, very quickly. So let's talk a bit more about Sonal. I'm going to ask you to kind of go a bit more into your journey, because I know you've got an interesting story kind of from like the corporate world to coaching. Yeah. And obviously we've been working together doing your program as well. So if you could tell us a bit about, your journey from day one to kind of where you are today, that'd be really cool.
Yeah, sure. So that's going way back because I'm pretty old. So I'm going back to like when I was 19. So that's 24 years in corporate. And, when I look back at my first job, I had a decision to make between, because I walked out of uni. I just hated it. I found it so boring, but I didn't tell my parents. And so I applied for a couple of jobs. And back then my experience was literally like part-time, like store assistant. And I didn't have anything else. So I was really lucky that I got an offer from an accountancy firm and an investment bank. And when you're that age, I think the bright lights of the city just reel you in. And so I went for the investment banking, and that's how my career started. So I stayed working in investment banks for all that time. And as the years went on, I started really enjoying the stuff that other people used to hate. So process streamlining. So basically simplifying the mess that we seem to create on really simple things and make it really complex. And I got known for it. So I've worked in quite a few banks. One thing for me was I just couldn't do at the time, I couldn't do 10 years in one job. I'd get bored quite quickly. So I'd needed something challenging. And that was my passion for years and years and years. And then in 2019. So the amount of money that I'd saved companies by doing what I did, we kind of thought, there are so many small businesses out there that definitely could benefit from this. And in our naivety, we kind of thought, they're going to know what process improvement is, and it's going to be great. And it was a nightmare. We were still kind of in that corporate world. So my husband set it up, and we had to work so hard on understanding how kind of that entrepreneurship world, soloprenneurship world worked, because it's very different to business, to corporate.
Chalk and cheese, right? Just totally different.
Yeah,
world.
Completely. And it's like a world that I didn't even know existed until I kind of set foot in it, actually. Because I had set up my own businesses before, but it was in jewelry design. So it's very, very different. And the fashion world is one crazy beast in itself. But this was so different. And I had to really learn to, break things down into simple words and explain what we did. So I actually started out doing virtual assistance work, not realizing that. Sorry, can you give me 1 sec? I've got really bad cough.
Have some more, it's fine. I've actually had while you're doing that, a couple of questions have popped into my head, which I'm going to write down and come back to at the end. But you made a great point about, and I don't think people that aren't in business know that there's a difference between like a bootstrapped entrepreneurial company compared to, HSBC. And they're literally like They're different planets, totally different planets.
They're completely different beasts. And for us, it was understanding, we started, I don't know anyone that had their own business, not in my friend circle, not in our family circle. So our accountant was actually, telling me to go to a networking event, which I resisted for about 3 months. And so I went and didn't realize I had to do this 60-second pitch. And I just registered my company name. And they put me under the category of virtual assistant. And I just thought, you know what? I'm working virtually. I'm helping businesses. Perfect. And they obviously thought I was a VA, a virtual, like an actual virtual assistant. And I took the opportunity to go into businesses and be like, this is how I'm going to understand what problems they face and relate what we do to how we can help them. So I did that for a few months and then, worked out how I was going to do it. But the biggest difference for me was it was just a completely different world. And I think had I known back then how different it was, the first thing I would have got was a business coach to help guide me through that process. I was lucky that I had businesses set up before, and I'd made those mistakes before. So I was a bit more clued in setting up a business, but knowing how the environment works, knowing how many people own their own businesses, it was just a huge, huge surprise. And, you really need to meet people where they're at. And the biggest changes that stood out for me is that the two worlds are very different, but they're also very similar. Both have their challenges. And, I think there's this huge dangerous rhetoric on social media that solopreneurship is going to just solve all your problems and create beautiful rainbows in the sky. And that, if it's only corporate people that get burnt out. And if that was the case, I wouldn't have my coaching business right now. And many others wouldn't, you can burn out and you can completely crush your health in both because, it's down to you and how you manage your life. And I guess the other difference for me was that the team environment's obviously not there, especially when you're a solopreneur. So I felt the loneliness a lot more in the business, on the business side. You don't have that, even though you've got clients, you don't have that consistency of seeing the same person every single day, working with them in a big project, brainstorming, all those things went. And while I enjoyed it for the first kind of couple of years, I did start to feel bouts of, feeling in my own little island and, missing parts of the corporate world that I actually really enjoyed.
Yeah. So it sounds like going from the team environment, the coffee breaks and the water cooler chats, all that stuff. I mean, it's a strange one because I've never had that. I suppose I used to work in gyms, which would be the equivalent. I've never worked in a corporate environment. I've never really had a job, really. I've always worked for myself. So it's not something I've ever kind of missed. But I think maybe when you go into a world, obviously I'm now on the computer all day doing sales and marketing for the company.
Yeah.
Years ago, I'd be in the gym chatting to people, and that's now gone. COVID was partly to blame for that.
Yeah.
And it's probably a similar story for a lot of people that used to be in an office and now they're on their own staring at a blinking light all day. And it's a strange change for people. But I suppose with what you do, I'm an entrepreneur, so I know exactly what it's like to feel like you're drowning sometimes in all different types of shit, So I suppose what you do, you come in and the word clarity is something that sprung up in my mind when you asked me earlier, well, how would I describe what you do? Because I'm actually working on something at the moment, and clarity is a word that came up, and performance around, how can you improve performance? So do you want to just quickly, just the abridged version, because I know that what you do is more complicated than 30 seconds, but just tell us, how you would come into, an SME or a solopreneur company and take them from where they are to kind of where they need to be.
Whether it's business or life, you have to understand your current reality. You have to understand everything that's around you right now. And it's a case of kind of sorting out the mess and knowing what mess you're dealing with. That's the first place I'd always go. And then the second step is always understanding where you want to be. So we call it like a current state, future state, and then you've got the gap. And that's that gap analysis inside that you really want to work on. That's where we start working on getting clear on the, those core values that we tend to not realize we have because we don't really spend time understanding ourselves. And then it's a case of understanding, right, in our current world, what needs to go that doesn't align with that. So we can now start focusing more on the things what I call the high value activities and bringing more of those into our life. And then the supporting activities behind that. And there are always going to be things that, life's not all roses. Like, you are going to have to do things that you just absolutely hate or don't enjoy doing. And there it's a case of how can you minimize time and how can you make it more effective so you're not spending, days and days on admin, for example, and other things that you don't enjoy. And once you've cleared up that space, that's where you've now got room to breathe, because you've kind of killed the noise. You've got a clear focus on what you want to bring more of into your life, and you know how to protect it. So yeah, that's the short version.
And then you gain that clarity, right? You gain clarity on what it is, what is your purpose, what you're doing this for, what excites you, what gives you energy. And that's been, obviously we've only done like 3 or 4 weeks now, but I'm definitely starting to gain more clarity on what's important. I think, just to kind of move to the left a little bit, when you start a business from zero and, you don't, I'm talking as people that are bootstrapping stuff. There's there's obviously funding options and stuff, but the stress levels are real in both environments. They're not different, just different types of stress. I think, you've got so many different elements to the business, probably 20 or 30 when you start. And the more clarity you can get on, okay, which bits do I actually need to focus on to make the biggest impact? That's where kind of what you do has really been impactful for me just in the short time. But I can imagine it helps a lot of people to go, actually, I'm spending 5 hours a week doing this thing over here, but it's not adding any value. It's not making me happy. Why am I doing it?
Yeah. And it's, once you're clear on that decision making and making that simpler, and once you're clear on what you are going to say no and yes to, because you understand what you stand to lose, that's when life becomes much easier, because there's no, because that's where there's no kind of, in those instances, there's no gray area. It's like, here's what I stand for. Here's what I want more of in my life. Does that activity bring more of it or less of it? If it brings less of it, it's gone.
Yeah.
And I do get accused of oversimplifying everything, but I like it like that. I think we overcomplicate stuff. There's no need for it.
I would wholeheartedly agree. With what we do. I think, especially people we deal with, they're smart people. CEOs are not there because they're stupid. They're there because they're very, very clever. Business owners that have been successful and not stupid people. So when they look into how do I turn my health around, often they go to the most complicated version of what they can do, rather than going, actually, what 3 things can I change today that have a big impact? That's very similar to what we do, actually. Keep it simple as possible.
Yeah, and it's what you said, right? If you break it down to its smallest, that smallest step or that denominator, it's always going to be habit.
Yes.
Like, which 3 small things can you incorporate? For me, in terms of exercise, even when I was in the office, it wasn't so bad, but like being at home, working from home day in, day out. So I've been working from home way before COVID. And it's a case of, you actively have to make time because it's very easy. I could sit here and, day can turn into night. I will not realize. And so you actually have to actively walk away and move away and go for that walk. And you need to build that time in. And because you could be there working on your laptop for a while and just, forget about it. And it becomes very easy. A lot of people did, even I put on weight over COVID, and, we didn't have anywhere to go. And so for me, the biggest thing was in corporate, I'd be able to I used to get off at Hyde Park and walk down to Liverpool Street or Barbican. So I used to get in pretty early just for that walk and to avoid the mad, crazy people running to get to work.
Yeah, too much.
And I wouldn't necessarily go to the gym, but there were people that would go to the gym, go to classes, in between their breaks. And there were ways of doing it because you were out of their home environment. When you're in the home environment, you're now battling with work things and home things, and it becomes very easy to stay where you are. So I had to make a conscious effort to create the least path of resistance. So I've got my weights literally here on the floor, and we ended up buying a treadmill, which is downstairs. And you don't have to do long sessions. It's just literally, if I had half an hour, I could go down and just get onto that treadmill if I can't go out for a walk. But often I find, and I don't know if it must be the case for you as well, is that when we're trying to do that, we can come up with so many excuses not to, no matter how simple we've made it. And I think it's that needs the work. And it's what you said is that when you break it down to the simplest thing, it's like, okay, what's that one non-negotiable you can bring in to your day that will make today a good day, even if you don't get anything else done, even if it's like a 10-minute run or a 10-minute walk. Because then when you're in that zone, you'll be like, oh, I'll do 5 minutes more. Maybe I'll do another 5 minutes more.
It's really interesting because, I mean, you've kind of got into a little bit about the challenges you have around staying fit, staying healthy, and also some of the things you've done to kind of overcome them, right? You've got weights in the room there, you've got a treadmill, you factor in walks into your day. I mean, the people we deal with, so CEOs, as you know, very, very busy. And when you hear people, when you say to people they're busy, I don't think people that aren't at that level, haven't seen that level, know what busy is, because we're talking some of our guys are working from 6 a.m. till 8 at night. Most days they're traveling 2-3 times per month to different countries. You know, they are busy. They're not really home that much. So what we find, similar to what you've done, is to lower that barrier, lower that kind of, lower the amount of excuses you can make. For example, you know, if you're mega busy, getting to the gym is a big deal. You got to find time to drive there, time to walk there, time to work out, time to shower, time to change, time to dry. So it's all this other stuff that makes the excuses much more valid, because like, well, actually, I can't spend an hour and a half training. So CEOs, you've got to train at home. You've got to train in the morning. As soon as you wake up, you need to do workout. All these little tiny tweaks that make a huge difference, because suddenly it's like, oh, right, okay, now I have no excuses. No, because you just wake up and do it. Same if you're traveling. You get up and you do it. So it's really interesting to find that actually what you've done did do is very similar to what we recommend with our clients. It's simple, but it really works. Do you want to kind of move us on a little bit, because you spoke a bit about, you know, the challenges you had in COVID, the challenges that you now have as sitting in front of your computer, doing cool stuff the same as I do. You know, for you then, I mean, this is kind of like a question about you personally, and also what you would transfer onto the people watching this. What would be the 3 biggest kind of lessons that you've learned in business, you know, from the corporate world into coaching, and how do you feel that, you know, people would benefit from kind of hearing those as well?
The challenges of moving, the lessons that I've learned.
The biggest lesson you've learned, on your journey, really. Your journey.
I think for me, one of the biggest lessons, and this has just come in many different ways as well, is reaching out for help. I was not shy of asking out for help, in business and in my business and in the corporate world. I always question everything, which has always been good. And if I look back to my early days, I'd always go to Google. And as we know, the places are very, there's just so much information anywhere, and you need to be very clear and very careful with what you filter and what you pay attention to. So for me, it's always getting that right help. I always have a coach that's working with me, whether it's a business coach, like a life coach, or whatever it is that I need, I will have one. The second is, so for me, it's something that's important, and that's creativity. And, when we talk about creativity, it's not just, sitting there with watercolors and painting. It's being open to explore what's possible and being creative with those ideas, being creative to see the 1,001 opportunities that are there. So, that can apply to problem solving. It can apply to, sourcing new opportunities. That for me has been, something that is very close to my heart, but something that I've done even more in the last few years as well.
Yeah.
And then the third, I would say, is detach from the outcome. So, I look back at my time as a process consultant, and I'm going to be doing that in a month's time again. And if I look at the way people come in on those things, that the business or the stakeholders will always be like, I need the outcome to look a certain way. And you have a big job of trying to detach them from it, just, explore the process and really enjoy that, because it means that your outcome will be much better, because you're just focusing on those next steps, and you're more adaptable than when changes occur or when things happen outside of our control. Same with, running your own business and life in general. So for me, those would be the 3 things, the 3 big lessons.
Well, I'm glad you could pull those out of your head. That was impressive. Often you ask those questions.
That was the longest answer ever.
It's cool. I think I'm just going to ask a couple of questions around that, actually, because you mentioned about asking for help. And I would say, again, referring back to my experience with what we do and the types of people we deal with, highly successful. I'm going to say this, and I do often say this when I post, and it's always about honesty and clarity. Yeah. I find oftentimes CEOs are surrounded by people that blow smoke up their arse and tell them how amazing they are.
100%. Yeah. Like I can tell you that is correct as well. Just crazy. And they need people that challenge them. That's what they're looking for. They are looking for that.
They and this is kind of reverting back to what you said, because you're asking for help, right? Which is a very mature thing to do, is to say, hey, look, I don't know everything. I'm vulnerable. Help me, right? Be coachable. What I often find, and I'm hoping that maybe some CEOs watch this and think, Cameron's a bit of a dick, or Cameron's chatting sense, whichever one it is. I don't care too much, but that's what we're here to talk about. They need to, especially when it comes to health and fitness, they need to hear what they need to hear, not what they want. And oftentimes, when I do speak to CEOs, I describe it as they're like the Titanic heading towards the big iceberg, right? And they're going to it takes a long time to try and turn them around. Yeah. And it's cool, it's fine, because they're that type of person, which is fine. But I would say for anybody who's watching this that is a CEO, if your health's in a bad state, if your life feels a bit crazy, if you feel like, you're drinking too much, eating too much, and you're getting to that stage where you're starting to get worried about it, probably it makes sense to start asking for a bit of help, because, it makes you feel vulnerable, and it means you're going to have to answer some deep questions that maybe you don't want to answer. But what's the alternative? What's the alternative, right? And that's the thing that motivates CEOs to say, what's the alternative? Because if you keep doing what you're doing, working on the hours, traveling, drinking, eating, not focusing on anything particular, the outcome's not great. So that was me kind of splurging. Back to what you said, when it comes to asking for help, then how did you decide upon what type of help you needed and what was most important for you?
It became more clear to me when I had my breakdown in 2016. So that was like my third burnout, which is a whole other story.
Third?
Yeah, that was a third burnout. But I always say it was like I had two burnouts and then I had a breakdown. But that was the third, and the breakdown was the outcome of it. And you're kind of there at that was complete rock bottom for me, and there is no way up. And you realize that all the people that you've been thinking that can help you, they're not in a position to, like friends, family, whoever, they're not equipped to deal with it. And so I went onto the internet and I just searched for people, and I was searching for the right type, like, how do I know what the right type of person is for me? And, I spent about a day researching and then coming up with a short list. And at that time I just went with my gut, the name that felt right. And, then, I could feel patterns. So, therapy is brilliant. It got me a diagnosis of complex PTSD, but after about the third or fourth session, I'd had enough of just talking and, revisiting the past. And because I knew, I understood the issues that I needed to deal with. And I wanted to know how to move forward. Mm-hmm. Because for someone as fidgety and, someone who likes doing stuff and would set up a business if they got bored rather than just get another hobby, I wanted to not pause my life. I wanted to get better and do other things. I didn't want life to stop for me. And I just knew that the therapist wasn't the right person to do that, but I didn't know who else to go to. So then I did some research, and, that's where I was like, okay, I'm going to go to a holistic therapist because I've had chronic stress. My cortisol levels are so high. I'm going to try that. And part of it is also going with your gut as well. Like I was offered medication so many times and I just felt it was just the wrong thing for me. So I went down the holistic route. And then you just learn about all these other different types. You just realize this world is so huge. And I was just curious. And so as I started going through, my journey was about 3-4 years. It was when I set up my business that I went to that networking environment. I'm like, oh, there's a thing called a business coach. There's a marketing coach. There's all these things. I can get all this help. This is brilliant. And anytime I'd get stuck, I wouldn't even, maybe there was a bit of resistance in the beginning, but then I'd be like, I just need to find the right person for this to help me with this thing. Because at the end of the day, we're expecting people to reach out to us for help. And you become a complete hypocrite if you don't do it for yourself.
And also you kind of slowly realise that actually I don't know what I'm doing. Could someone just tell me what to do? And it's kind of, with what we do, we're coaches, right? So we kind of go, right, we'll just do that, and that. That's going to help you. Whereas when you're in that situation, you don't really know. And again, back to what we do, because it keeps popping up. fitness and health is full of people that think they know what they're doing, but they don't have a single clue what they're doing.
Yeah, and my if I look back at my fitness journey, I can tell you now that is just so spot on. In 2013, I'd lost about, it was like a 12-week program. I'd lost about, I don't know, I think it was like 2 stone or something. I was in the gym 6 days a week, and I did love it. I've got to admit, I did love it, but I became a bit addicted to it. And my meal plans were written out, 5 meals a day for 12 weeks, all written out for me, and I had to follow it. There was no veering off that path. Like, I had to do it that way. And it was all high protein, literally minimal carbs, and minimal fat. And at the end of it, you feel great, you feel and look great, and then you're like slowly introducing back, you're living like a normal human being, and you realize it's not sustainable, and it does really mess up your body. And I think back then was the time where everyone was talking about getting lean and all this stuff. So that, there you go, it's like the fads and the trends, very easy to, even the best people in the industry got taken in by it, because that's what they're learning, that's what they know. And they don't anything that's like that restricts you from a specific like food group, you're never going to be able to sustain it. And I get it with people with diabetes and stuff like that, low GI and all these things. Yes, but that is also moderating. They're not telling you to cut it out of your life completely. And it's dangerous, because the minute you Google stuff, you see like there's just so many things. It's a
minefield.
Yeah, and then someone will always go for the one where they think they're just going to lose about 5 stone overnight. They'll wake up suddenly feeling like really fit and healthy, and it's never the case.
It's just that crush mentality, isn't it? It's just like, get it off quick. The thing is, what people don't realize, you can get it off quickly, in a sustainable way. There's ways you can lose weight, but also carry that on over to long term. We're not big on calories at all, because we're dealing with people that are exceptionally busy. And in my experience, and I've done this a few times now, it's not my first rodeo, people that are really successful and very, very busy don't particularly want to track calories. They want to think about bottom lines and business numbers. They don't really care about my fitness pal. So if you go, right, just eat this, this and this, much simpler, it just works across the board.
So how do you do that with your clients then? So how do they know that they're having the right amount that's going to help them to shift and work with their fitness?
Good question. We've flipped the interview now. So
tell me about yourself, Cameron.
Yeah, well, we've done that before. Yes, I mean, the problem with calories is that it works. It does work, because obviously, you're going to type your macros into a computer and it will spit your number out. But for people that are exceptionally busy, it requires them to repackaging, requires the potential to weigh stuff, requires them to have MyFitnessPal or keep it in a book like 1952. And it's just a little bit of extra aggravation. What we try to do with our clients is to say, look, these are non-negotiables. You have to reply to your coach. You have to do 8 out of the 10 things we ask of you as a bare minimum. You have to be coachable, and you have to trust that we know what we're doing. Yeah. If they can do those 4 things, this is going to be a breeze. If they can't do all those 4 things, don't bother, because you need to go and see someone that wants to just take your money and let you run in a running machine for an hour. That's not what we're doing.
Yeah.
And what we find is that once that's all in place, as long as they're eating enough protein, so protein every meal, the right types of protein, good quality protein, McDonald's doesn't count, but if it's good quality, giving them grab and go options. If they can't get a meal, they can go to Marks and Spencer's or Waitrose or Tesco's and grab some stuff. Once protein for me and for us guys is probably the most important, because what it means is it helps you to recover. It's good for energy. It's very hard. It doesn't metabolize into fat as easy as what carbohydrates can do, because that's mainly where people make the mistake of sitting down all day. Get enough healthy fats into their diet. So every meal they have a little bit of fat in there. Reduce carbohydrates right down, similar to what you did. And then lots and lots of green vegetables. It's really simple.
Yeah.
And the great thing about that, some people might call it paleo or keto or whatever, because we call it a million different things. It's pretty much how most people should eat. That's how most people should eat. And then what happens is they learn that as a new habit. Okay, right. So I've got an event tomorrow. I'm going to this restaurant. All right, cool. This is what I should eat, because they understand it. And during the process with our program, they'll actually send us photos of the food, photos of their plates of food, so we can give them feedback on what they're eating. So by the time they come out at the end of 6 or 12 weeks, they understand exactly how this works. And kind of back to your point earlier about, people kind of losing weight and going back to where they were very, very quickly. Weight Watchers, Slimming Well, all that kind of stuff is very well known for massive rebounds, going back to where you were plus another 5 kilos. That fundamental way of eating essentially becomes your way of eating forever.
Yeah.
And if you fall off plan because of you're going to watch England play rugby and you have 10 pints, or you go on holiday away for the weekend to Seville and you have 4 gallons of wine, it's fine, but you just go back onto the plan once you're off of that. So I think hopefully that answers your question. But we find that works better for busy people because the whole calorie thing, trust me, unless they're extremely analytical. I think all the time I've done this, I've had 2 people that really enjoyed doing calories. And we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of people we've worked with. So a tiny percentage. Most people want to go, right, just tell me what to put on the plate and let me help us understand why, what the benefits are, and they can follow that through for forever. But I'm going to put the interview back on you now because it was there. You flipped out the other way, but appreciate the question. Just finally then, because I tried to keep these as close to kind of half an hour-ish as possible. Bit of a deep one, but what for you then would be, the legacy you'd like to leave behind, or the thing you'd like to be remembered for?
For me, it goes back to, I guess, being able to help more men actually realize that they can achieve their personal goals, have an amazing, healthy lifestyle, and have incredible relationships, and they don't have to sacrifice one for the other. They tend to, I've learned from personal experience, we've lost quite a few people far sooner than they should have gone. And so for me, there was always this battle with them between the expectations from their family or whoever it was, and feeling like they just stuck, that they couldn't really do what it is they wanted to do. So that would be the legacy that I want to leave.
Very cool. Very cool. I think it's, again, the more we talk, the more I can kind of see parallels between what we do.
Yeah.
Our thing is, our guys or girls, they get into these senior positions, they've got the money. That's ticked off, right?
Yeah.
They've hopefully got the relationships, but then the health fails. Yeah. So they've kind of got these 2 things, or often they only have one thing because what they've done to get to the top of the success mountain sometimes costs their relationship. They're not together with their family because they've spent time. Fingers crossed they've got the 2, and then it's the health that fails. And as you know, as Maslow tells us, without physical fitness, without physical health, there's nothing else. So you don't have anything.
Yeah, because they're the core pillars, aren't they? Like, you can't really do anything without those. And, this goes back to, I guess, the synergy between what we do is that self-care is first. You have to be 100% yourself, because you need that energy and drive to show up fully for everyone else and for the things that you want to do as well. But without that mental and physical health, you're not going to get very far.
And you've only got I often say to CEOs, I don't think they actually realise. I think they think they don't die. Yeah. By the way, you know that you've got like a battery life, right? So imagine there's a Duracell battery in your back at the moment. It doesn't last forever, right? That's slowly disappearing. And the more you don't sleep, the more you drink, the more you live in a high stress environment, the more you kind of don't look after yourself and eat crap and eat processed food. You're literally chopping energy off all the time. And it baffles me that people don't realise that. But
no, they're just, I think sometimes they don't know what signs to look for. Other times they ignore the symptoms.
Yeah.
Those 2 are definitely the ones I've seen in my dad as well.
Right.
And in other people in corporate.
Would you say men at work? I know it's quite a generalisation. Do you think, I don't know if you want to go answer this question, but do you find that men are worse than women about understanding their own mortality, or is that too hard a generalisation to make? Why do you work with men over women?
I personally feel it because I've seen it more in men, but then I've worked in male-dominated spaces for all my life. Right. And so I have seen it more in men. I've seen more men die from it, including my dad, and people in their 40s. And so for me, I do believe that it is, there's more, they probably get loads of stick for that, but I feel that there's more, there's more pressure on on men to kind of, or they put it on themselves as well sometimes, they do it for themselves. They want to fix everything. They want to be looked up to by every single person.
You described me basically.
And they want people to, look up to them, and they want to do all these things, and then they just don't know when to stop. And deep down, when you look at it, it is the way culture, it's the way society, it's the way their own families or parents have brought them up and maybe held those unreal expectations, like outdated stereotypes. Whole other debate, which I get very passionate about, so I'll leave it there.
It's a really deep subject, but it's,
Yes.
it's a very, very interesting subject for me because, it's me, that is what you described is me. And it's working with you that's made me go, oh shit, actually, maybe this is not the way to do things because, is it society? Is it just the genes of men? I don't know. There's always this deep passion to kind of do more and feel like you should be doing more. And this expectation of, I don't think it's, for me personally, I don't think it's societal. I just think it's just me. It's just how I feel. I want to be more successful and drive. But, always because of what I do, I understand that there's a cost to that.
Yeah.
Health. I mean, I would say I'm probably between a 6 and an 8 stressed all the time, just in general. But you become accustomed to that feeling, right? It's not healthy, but it's part of, if you want to get to that level, there's going to be a trade-off somewhere, and obviously you can help, but there's going to be some kind of trade-off, right?
There is always, and knowing which ones to accept and which ones to never ever compromise is key. But also, there's stress is good as well, right? We have to determine the good stress and the bad stress. Because if we weren't, we don't want to get to all bad, and you want the good stress because that is what drives you, and that's the thing. It's you want to get right down to the thing that really you're passionate about, that burning desire. That if you didn't have these things in your life would be meaningless. You want more of that in your life. Yeah, and then it's a case of learning how to prioritize.
Yeah, it's kind of I don't know who made the quote, but it's that kind of you never know how strong you are till you've got another choice. And it's kind of like, until you get to that point where, I've got another choice here, but to go forward, I feel like that's where the magic happens, because you've got this, it's about burning your boats, right? I'm going to get there, or I'm going to die. They're the two options. So it's a mad one. I know there's definitely balance and acting there somewhere, but all the people I know that are successful, I mean, all of them, I know a lot, they all have a similar story. It's like, it was going really, really bad and I was ready to give up. Just pushed a bit more, and then bingo, it happened. So it's an interesting place to be. But I know that most people that are successful, a large percentage, push through that kind of, that stress, that worry, that feeling of being a bit, should I give up here? I get that feeling a lot, trust me.
Yeah. And that, what, the drive is really good. Having drive and grit and that perseverance is where you want to be, but you also need to know what to quit and when. We had this conversation before, didn't we? Like, you need to know what to let go of as well, so you can focus even more on the thing that you need to persevere with.
Yeah.
And that's where people get, people stick with the wrong things for a bit too long. Those fad diets.
Yes.
They'll continue doing it and not even realize that it's messing up their health even more. But yeah, it's being discerning with what you have. And I love that example that you gave, because when you have no choice, suddenly you have all the choices in the world, because you're now looking at, right, I can see with all these limitations around me, I can see what's possible.
Yeah.
I need to do one of those things, because I can't, there's nothing else I can do. I can't stay here.
Yeah. I'm not going to give up and go and work in, go and do a job that I hate for the rest of my life,
Yeah.
Well, this has been a very interesting chat. We could probably chat for another 3 hours, but I'm not going to, because I said I'd keep this half an hour, already at 4 minutes. Thank you for your time. Really, really appreciate it. Where can people check out what you do? Where can they go and learn a bit more about how to get in contact? Just let us know. I'm mostly on LinkedIn, and I also have a website, so that's sonalbhaskaran.com. But yeah, LinkedIn's my kind of home at the moment as well. Cool. Well, we'll definitely put the link. This is going to go on LinkedIn anyway, and YouTube. Cool. We'll put the links underneath it. So please do check out Sonal's website. Check out what she does. I can vouch for her. She's incredible. She's amazing what she does. So, trust me, because you've got to trust me, right? And then, if you want to check out what we do at True Fitness, I'm also going to put a link underneath this for our free ebook, which is an ebook which tells you how to be healthier, more productive, especially if you are a CEO, senior executive that feels like you don't have a moment to breathe, let alone a moment to get your heavy lifting and your weights into your diary. So thanks again, Sonal, and I appreciate your
Thank
time.
you.
I'll
It's
speak to
been
you very
great.
soon.
Yep. Thank
Cheers,
you.
Sonal.
Bye.